All right, let's get this started. Welcome back to another episode of the In Transition podcast. We're so excited to have this conversation with Kat Wile today. Before we jump in and talk about her transition of picking up her life and moving to New Zealand, which I can't wait to hear more about, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kat. Kat is the founder of the WC, a newsletter and website, which is in pre-launch, exciting, of curated resources for women and girls to equal the playing field in education, business, the arts, and more. I need to hear more about this.
Definitely.
Like many of us, she lives in a constant state of transition. Yay! From spending a semester in China to starting a career in finance, on her way to becoming an FBI agent, to moving to New Zealand so she could kayak off waterfalls, to entrepreneurship or multiple cross-country moves. She finds energy in being in motion. So many good things to talk about in that one sentence.
I feel so many episodes.
Yeah, like, oh my gosh.
That's going to
be FBI agent. Yep.
FBI agent. Yep.
That's for real.
Yep.
She has interned with the FBI, by the way. So that was a real path. She's worked for Fortune 100, social enterprises, tech startups, and led and supported nearly 80 disaster response and COVID-19 response efforts. Like, wow. While she often finds constant change stressful, we'll probably hit on that, she thrives gaining experience in various industries, communities, and interests, and gains inspiration from people who take chances and make daring changes at every stage of life. She's a pretty darn good home cook, yay, like that too, and loves hosting dinner parties, fostering communities. She helped launch a co-working space in Denver. She's lived there too, and creating events such as Gear and Beer. She's lived in New Zealand, which you're obviously going to hear about today, and China, and dreams of living abroad again in multiple countries and growing an international real estate and business portfolio with the hopes of escaping winter forever. Amen. Me too. She currently resides in Washington, D.C. with her fiance, Jeremy, and many plants that she does her best not to kill. Maybe you can teach me how to do that because I cannot keep plants alive in my house. Welcome, Kat.
You live in the desert.
Hello. Welcome, Kat. We're so happy to have you here. And I was like, I can't believe we only get to talk about New Zealand out of all of those things we just talked about.
I almost feel like the better question.
They all weave.
They all weave together.
I almost feel the better.
Oh, they all weave together.
I almost feel the better question for you down the line is, where have you not lived?
True.
I feel that.
True. So many places.
Yeah.
Well, at the top of all of these podcasts, we start with the question, what was the catalyst to this transition to move to New Zealand? So give us a little backstory.
So the catalyst to that was, it was 2012. So I was 4 years out of college at that time. I had been working at Bank of America in corporate finance for 4 years because I'd gotten recruited to them through like a fancy finance program. And I stayed at the market, was in the toilet, and jobs weren't readily available, but it was also because I wanted to be an FBI agent at the time. And the FBI does not like to see it when you change jobs frequently. They like to see that you're kind of, at least at the time they're recruiting, they like to see that you're stable and kind of committed. So I had, as I'd stated, I'd interned with them. So I was in that process of becoming an FBI agent. And I was halfway through the process and I hated my job. It just was not the right role for me, being in corporate finance. Of just something I've realized throughout my life is I really like seeing the output of my work. And so kind of this nebulous job of like, you're working on spreadsheets and financial documents and stuff, and they go up in the ether and then you never see the impact of them. Yeah. And so it just was a really bad fit for me. And so I decided I wanted to not do that. And then the FBI decided, I don't really know if I want somebody determining what I can and can't do for the next 20 years of my life and where I will live and the good old boy bureaucracy and all of that kind of stuff. I'd wanted to be an agent because I wanted to work with anti-human trafficking and the child sex trade and work in that kind of space. But then I decided, just kind of at the time, they had changed the way they were recruiting and placing people kind of post 9/11 a few years. And it was like, okay, it's just not the right fit for me anymore. So I decided to leave that job. I was dating someone at the time who was really adventurous, and we were both whitewater kayakers, and we were going to go kind of do a global trip. And, he was kind of free and easy and stuff. I quit my job the next day. He broke up with me.
Ow.
And yeah,
all those transitions at once.
Man,
Oh
that,
yeah.
whoa, okay.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
brutal. And so I was very blindsided. He was kind of my person at the time. Looking back, not my person. It's probably more of an infatuation than love, I think, because he embodied a lot of that free spirit adventurousness that I wanted to be. But that was a really, really difficult breakup. It took 6 months, and I moved to Denver the first time because I just left my job in Charlotte, North Carolina, and just kind of needed to get away from him in the situation. So I went out to Denver and spent a couple months there helping a friend launch a company, and met some fellow kayakers on the river there who had just come back from living in New Zealand for a year. And they're like, you should go to New Zealand because it's amazing. And we had contacts, and they recognized me because my kayak was actually from a company made in New Zealand that my prior boyfriend had imported their kayaks to the United States. So instead of doing the global tour with him for a year and kayaking and stuff, I bought a one-way plane ticket to New Zealand and didn't come back for a year.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wild. That's wild. I really only know one other person in my life that's done something like that. It's just like, I'm going to take off and I don't know when I'm going to come back or if I'm going to come back.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be there for 4 months. And after 4 months, I was like, the first couple was a little tough kind of being on your own and navigating. And the people in New Zealand are lovely, and it's a small country. So it's, two roads. So driving's easy and stuff. But I found a place that I fell in love with, and I sobbed when I had to leave, at the end of the year. But I advise everyone to do it if they can, because it's an adventure for sure.
Well, I mean, what goes into making that kind of decision? Because I feel like most women would like analyze everything.
Lists and like checklists that you have to do. I mean, I just kind of get the vibe that you just, I'm going to go. We just buy a ticket and I'm out.
Yeah, a lot of alcohol. It's helpful. Buy a plane ticket with a glass of wine in hand.
Like, oh, did I just do that?
This sounds like a good idea. Like,
yes, I'm going.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, I was 25, I think, at the time, and so I was pretty unattached. I didn't have obviously didn't have a partner at the time, didn't have a dog, didn't have a house or anything like that. And the good thing of working at Bank of America was it set me up financially for a little while. So I was able to make that kind of decision to pick up and go and not have to worry about my finances at the time, which was really something I look back and very grateful for, because I had no clue about how much money was at that point in time and stuff. And having that freedom was really amazing. But yeah, definitely in my 20s, I was like I've changed in my 30s now about my risk tolerance, maybe, but or how I approach change and transition. In my 20s, it was very much if something didn't suit me, it was like quit and bolt. So that's what's resulted in some of the multiple cross country moves. Or when I lived in Charlotte, I lived in I think 7 different houses in 4 years, and so yeah, for me, it's when something doesn't suit me. I used to very much like hard line it and just move on to something else. I'm trying to take a different way to approaching that kind of transition now. So
yeah, I mean, isn't that kind of what your 20s are for? Like, at least we hope so. Like, we're a little bit more impulsive.
Yeah,
like because I
I think to like my parents, I'm like, I can't believe they let me do that.
Well, you're 25, right? Can they stop you?
But still, like, I know how scary.
Mm-hmm.
No, but I could imagine how scary that is for your kid to just pick up and move to the other side of the world when they've been in this like crazy headspace. And
they're like, is this the best move for you?
How did they react when you told them? They were just like, okay. Or
pretty much that. I think they were supportive of it. I think, again, because, I had a couple friends who had contacts there, and I actually went and I started doing couch surfing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, and I'm not sure if it's still around or it might have changed. It was kind of like the precursor to Airbnb, and it was all just travelers letting you crash on their couch. And it was just reciprocal. It wasn't charged. And I did work away, or like work exchange, or willing worker on organic farms where someone would put you up if you did some help on their farm. So I worked as a horse guide. I would take people on like horse, because I used to be a horseback rider. So I'd take people on treks around. Just an amazing year. So I think because I had some of that in place, they were okay. And I think they just knew they weren't going to stop me, and it was something I needed. So I think definitely probably nerve-wracking, and they kind of kept it to themselves a little bit. But So I'm very grateful. Thanks, Mom, for letting me
awesome.
not freaking out at me.
Thanks for not stopping me.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I keep
this
thinking,
is pre social media now. So.
And I keep thinking people are listening to this probably going, this is giving me a lot of anxiety thinking about just like dropping my life and picking up and moving somewhere else without much of a plan. Did you have much of a plan going into this other than, like, I have some contacts?
I know people and I got some couches and okay, I'll figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were very loose contacts. Like they weren't my friends. They were like associates of, people that I met kayaking on the river, and they just like yelled at me from the shore because they could see the kayak I had was from New Zealand. So I became like friends with them, and they hooked me up with some really great people who took really good care of me. And then New Zealand's such a, again, just, it's a small country, but I'm like, it's like 20 years behind the United States sometimes. And it's just like, it feels safe and really communal. And it's like, you meet up with one person, they're like, oh, I've got a mate in this town and you can stay on his couch, or I've got another mate in this place he'll go kayaking with you. And so it just became this really organic network of people, and people I'd be in one place and kayak with them for a couple of weeks, and then we'd go our separate ways, and we'd like cross over each other in another, kind of outdoorsy kayaking town somewhere else in the country. And just becomes this like really, New Zealand's a really great place to, do van life. I lived out of my car for the first 4 months, just chasing the rivers. But no, I had no plan. I met people through like a whitewater kayaking forum and headed to this like town in on the North Island that's really known for kayaking, and got a kayak and jumped on the river and paddled up a 30-foot waterfall for the first time in my life.
Whoa. I was like, you have to have some amazing pictures, right?
Please tell us you have pictures.
Yeah. Oh my God. Amazing.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I have so many pictures. I bought like a nice DSLR camera for that. This is like Instagram had like just come out, and the iPhone, like you couldn't take it internationally, or like you'd have to like get it unlocked, and you couldn't change out the SIM cards and stuff. So it was nice because I was kind of detached from my previous life, because I had like an old brick phone and no GPS in my car. I was like using maps and stuff. So
I was like, nice. My brain is going, nice. Reminder everyone, Kat said this was like pre-social media, really. So there's like no scroll on Facebook to try and find groups or like any of that.
Yeah.
Just organic.
Facebook was around, but Instagram had just come out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend, one of my childhood friends. She actually, while you're talking, I remembered that she's from her family's from New Zealand. So she probably about 3 years ago, kind of on the bubble of COVID, she went and spent like 6 months in New Zealand with her then 4-year-old. She like enrolled her daughter in school, and she's like, she goes, there were cows crossing the road. She goes, and she said it was really hard for me to come back. And I'm like,
it really is. Yeah. I was like sobbing on the plane when I left. Luckily I was going to Nepal before I came back to the States, but it was really hard to leave. It was a wonderful,
just Nepal.
It's just Nepal. No biggie. It's not like I went back to the States. I just did a little thing in Nepal. No big. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Life was good in my 20s.
It sounds like a lot of adventuring. So
yeah.
So you went there kind of open-ended, stayed for a year. Mm-hmm. Why did you come back?
Yeah.
So I was there on a work visa. So if you're under 30, I think it's still the same policy. As an American, you can go for a year and then you can get jobs. So it's like a way for, you can get a job in a cafe or on an avocado farm or, wherever. Mm-hmm. If you're British, I think it's 2 years if you're part of the Queen's Empire. I forget what that's officially called. The Commonwealth. So I went for a year, and then it was at the point where I had a ton of friends. I found this town called Wanaka. It's on the South Island, about an hour north of Queenstown. Hands down, like one of the most stunning places I've ever lived. Every day I woke up, I was like, I can't believe I get to live here. It's just gorgeous. And I had a whole group of friends there, whether they were women who'd met their now Kiwi partners while they were traveling both in other places in the world, or they had come to New Zealand and fell in love and stayed, and had a lot of conversations with them about, like that means to kind of give up your life in your home country. So one of my good friends, she was from Wisconsin. She lives in New Zealand now and married actually my old roommate. And they have 2 babies now. And so her whole life is there. And again, it's a 30-hour trip to get home. It's an 18-hour time difference to the East Coast of the United States. So just trying to make phone calls home, you really had to schedule it. And that time, again, it was Skype and,
Skype.
you know, you didn't have, you didn't have WhatsApp and, you know, so it was just, you know, that was a lot. And to me, I think, I don't want to say I wasn't intentional going to New Zealand, because I was, but it was also like me bolting and escaping life that had become pretty unhappy for me in the United States. That it was kind of an escapism year. I was like, okay, you need to go back to reality and like figure out what you're doing. Like I was kayaking and chasing the rivers and kind of worked in a coffee shop just to have a little bit of income coming in. And, you know, it's kind of that like pressure of like, you need to figure out what you're going to do for a career and go do that. And, you know, it was kind of living this fairy tale life in Wanaka. But, you know, I still have a lot of the women that I traveled or met when I was there. They're still there. They're one of them, her and her partner opened a brewery, and another one does like these amazing weddings where there's glaciers there. So they do like helicopter tours and take you up and have your wedding pictures on top of a glacier. And so it's I'm like, you know, life could have been very different had I stayed. Oh my God, it's amazing. I tried to marry a Kiwi real hard. I tried my best.
I know. I was just thinking, Corey, you might need to go to New Zealand and not be intentionally single.
I'm intentionally single right now. Single.
Yeah.
Well, because they're like,
well, when you're ready to be done with that, you know.
I don't even know, but maybe I need to go to New Zealand and see if it's going to be, if I'm done with it.
For real. And like, before we started recording this, I was talking to Kat about how I lived in Australia when I was a teenager. So I have a little bit of a sense of what the vibe is like in New Zealand. I've been there before. And when she says these people are really kind and hospitable, it's like no joke. We have one view of how people are in the United States. So it's really hard, I think, for a lot of us that grew up here to imagine a place where you go and they're like, yeah, just like come crash on my couch, or like someone vouched for you and you're like, yeah, you're welcome. But they are really like
hitchhiking. Hitchhiking is still safe there. Like I hitchhiked, I picked up hitchhikers. Yeah.
They're really kind, fun people.
Yeah. And there's, you know, like some big, they call them treks, you know, big hikes and stuff. There was one location, it's in Mount Tongariro National Park. It's on the North Island. They filmed a lot of The Lord of the Rings in that national park. And when you're there, it's otherworldly. It's so crazy. But I met a German and Australian girl, and we did this big trek together. And then I was like, oh, you know, like the friends of my Colorado kayaking friends, I was staying at their house at the time. They're like, oh, they invited you over for dinner and like, you can hang out and stay or whatever. And the German girl's like, we don't do this in Germany. You don't invite like random strangers and then have the random strangers invite friends that you just met that day into somebody else's. But yeah, they were.
Yeah, that doesn't happen here. Here either.
It may start that way, but we may just never see you again. So I mean,
this is true. No, the only other place I've traveled where it's been somewhat like that was Switzerland, and like a small area of Switzerland where they were very much like, oh, party, like. There was all these street festivals, and they're like, you'd drink wine with everyone and you'd make new friends, and they'd be like, yeah, we're going to keep the party going at my house. Everyone come. And it's like, this is interesting.
I don't know you.
There's places like this.
Yeah. And I love it. And that's why I love it. And that's, you know, when I came back to the States, I moved to Asheville, North Carolina. And it's kind of similar vibe. It's, you know, the hippie outdoor, you know, all artisan, you know, artists and creators and stuff like that. So it's kind of a similar vibe of community. So that's kind of been a resounding theme for me, is trying to find community, because again, just all that travel and stuff, you meet people good all over the world, and you realize media is lying to you or just kind of highlighting the negative.
What comes into my mind while you've been talking about this, I feel like you took a gap year. That's what I feel like. Yeah, it's like you took a gap year. And wow, that's an amazing gap year.
Yeah. I'm a big fan for it. If I ever have kids, you know, I think I'd try and encourage them to do that between high school and college or whenever they want to do it. But I think it's no one knows what you want to do at 18. College is, you know, $1 bajillion these days. So, you know, when you take some time to go do something else, or, you know, I'm a big advocate for doing it whenever in life, you know, doing it as a single mom with a kid. I met people from all around the world who'd quit their jobs, sold their houses to fund it. We're doing RV tours from, you know, Europe to Australia. There was this really great family that they were Brazilian. The mom had been diagnosed with cancer, and they had always wanted to do a year sailing around the world.
Oh, wow.
So they did that. while they were in it in the middle of year one, found out they were pregnant.
Oh,
Had a baby on board. Found out mom actually did not have cancer. It was like something else.
Oh my gosh.
And when I met them in New Zealand, they were on year 10 of sailing around the world and had 2 kids that they were raising doing this. Yeah.
Wow.
The kids were so cool. Like, yeah.
That is wild.
I've seen things. I've seen families that do that. Like they just, you know what, we're just going to sell our house. They become, laptop entrepreneurs, and they just, kids in tow, just country hop.
Yep.
I'm semi envious of that, because I feel like I really resonate with that kind of life. And I always joke, I'm like, if I didn't have a child and an ex partner, it's part of his life, I would be totally into the digital nomad life. Because I love to travel and see different places. And Asheville is a great place. My dad lives there right now. So I know Asheville very well. And it is like a very unique little community. It's like a little microcosm, because the rest of that state is not like Asheville to me.
A little different.
And I'm like, they have drum circles and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Every Friday a drum circle like in the middle of town. Yeah, it's amazing. You float the river with like coolers and it's great.
I'm like, I want to take a step back, because I like this idea that Corey just threw out of like taking this gap year. Yeah, you took yours like a little bit later, but like to your point, you can do this at any point really if you decide to. I'm curious, in that year, what did you learn about yourself?
Yeah.
Oh boy. I think, I don't know if I like realized it at the time, but Corey, back to your question about like, how did you just do this when everyone else would be thinking about checklists and everything? I think it was just the planning is like way scarier than the doing. I think a lot of times it's like, just make a decision and go, and everyone else around you is going to think you're crazy or not know, or, and I found my tribe of people when I was there in New Zealand, because they'd all done something similar.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you kind of start doing that and you kind of just keep making those decisions, and I'm going to do this, or I want to do this now. And, I think that's something I've slid a little bit away from in my 30s, is being kind of that bold. Just because, life looks a little bit different. I'm not quite as untethered as I used to be, but just that taking action, and things are less scary than you think they are. So I think that was something, because again, it was one of the best years of my life. And it was just because I wanted to do something, I did it, and I didn't overthink it. And I kind of just listened to what felt right. I think maybe up until the end, when I was like, we need to go home and figure things out, which, I don't think was necessarily a good or bad thing. But life in New Zealand was very, very different.
Yeah.
Than I've ever experienced here. So that was a big thing, like really trusting people, and feel, again, I think that was a huge thing. I think I felt really different in New Zealand it was just that community was so genuine. And a lot of Kiwis, they will go away for a couple of years in their like 20s and then maybe come home. So like, again, people have traveled all around the world, and so they kind of understand, or again, it's just a really open community. So, I think, again, being a young woman living in the States, a lot of times you're always like,
you're on
when's
edge.
someone going to follow me home? Or, just like, you're always guarded. And I felt like living there, like obviously you're still a little bit guarded because you're still a single woman traveling, you don't know, but it was like way reduced. Just like it felt free, in a way that I don't think I've ever really felt in the States. So I think, just really getting that sense of like humanity, and kind of like, making me believe in the goodness of people. And like, there are more good people in the world than there are bad, and everything was huge.
Yeah. Like when you came back to the States, how hard was it, or how long did it take for you to get back to like, oh wow, this okay,
this is different.
This is how we work in the States. Okay.
Yeah. I think, again, coming back and living in Asheville helped, because again, it's kind of that like slower and kind of pressured life, because I didn't come back and go straight into like a marketing job or a finance job. I worked at a couple of breweries, and I started like a company where I was making dog biscuits out of like spent beer grain, like the grain that comes out of the process of making beer. And I started doing events there and was really tied into the outdoor community and was kayaking and mountain biking a lot and everything. So again, it kind of felt like a little bit smoother of a transition, but it was definitely, I think the hard thing was I'd lost that community of people who understood taking a transition like that or a risk like that. All of my friends who had gone to college with were in a very different stage of life where it was, they were getting engaged or moving in with boyfriends or having babies. And I had gone and done something that just didn't really fall in line with that. And so it kind of just created this difference in how we maybe communicated or understood each other's experiences. Like I couldn't necessarily understand the baby thing, and they maybe didn't know what to ask about my travels or what I learned and experienced and stuff.
Yeah, like how's dog biscuit making? How's that going for you? Yeah, I mean,
and so and just like like what it was like to travel and stuff like that, and I think it's like you just always see your experience through your lens. And then I did have a couple friends who they left jobs kind of after I did, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I was not as supportive for you during that really difficult time when you had that bad breakup and left a job you hated and stuff." Because like I just didn't understand it. Now that I've done it, like I understand, and I'm sorry I wasn't there for you more, which was nice to hear. But
You're like,
and usually that you can be there for them.
Never.
And I was like, I had been through that experience, so I could kind of be there for them in a way that they couldn't be there for me at the time because they hadn't been through it yet. Just like I haven't had a kid yet, so I can't necessarily empathize with somebody, but my friends will hopefully be empathetic to me when I'm going through that because they've been through it. So,
and I keep thinking, like you said the word escapism a couple times, and I think like almost to some degree in the US, like we find that to be like a negative to escape something. Like you don't want to deal with it or you don't want to face it, so you're just going to escape from it. But like everything you're saying, I almost feel like there was some sort of healing that came with that escapism. So it's not always this negative, like, oh, I'm going to run away from all my problems. Because I know people that have done this. Like, I'm going to move to a different country. My problems will be left in the United States. Like, I just won't deal with it.
Still there.
Yeah, they're still going to be there. But I'm like, that year, it sounds like it probably was a little bit of what you needed, like a little healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, there's a lot of healing because, the breakup, it took me, that probably took like 5 years to really get over. And it took like a year to get him out of my life. He was one of those ones that would like go away and then like pop back into your life and just like, just as you were feeling good would be like, I'm here.
Yes, I call those hanger-oners.
Like the back burner. Yeah, like
the back burner. No, the back burner.
No back burners. Nope.
Yeah.
No hanger-oners, no back burners.
Everybody puts you in a corner. Nope.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the worst. And it's like I feel like you become a little bit prone to like, oh, that would be easy to like get back. That was comfortable. Well, it was just what that's about.
I know
it was just be like, send it. I hope. Yeah, it's like to send the email like, oh, I hope you're doing okay. I'm like, fuck you. Like, I was fine until I got this email.
Fuck your back burner. See,
fuck your back burner.
Yeah, fuck your back burner. Yep.
Yeah.
Like, you need to just go. It's funny because I still have an ex from like before my husband. So this is like,
stop it.
14 years.
Stop it.
Still messages me on Instagram and still text messages me sometimes. And I'm like, what in the hell? I never respond. I'm like, are you not understanding this? Like, I am not in this headspace.
Why don't you just block them?
This is not happening.
I believe in the block. I'm a huge proponent of block.
Me too.
Yeah,
like it's my
bye-bye
job.
Yep. Bye-bye. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm curious, like, you come back, you reintegrate. What did you feel like was next for you at that point? Like, did you have a plan coming back?
Nope. I had thought about moving.
She's like, I just roll with this.
I woke up. Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. No, I had no plan. When I lived in New Zealand, again, I've been like just working in a cafe, kind of like everything was just like so fortuitous, and it's just like such a long story. I won't go into it now, but just like how I got this job, and it's like how I met this like roommate of two people that I lived with, and they were amazing. And then this amazing kayaker moved in. with us, which she kind of ties into later in my life as well. But just everything just like kind of happened. And I had also been like doing some writing and working for kind of like the Outside Magazine version in New Zealand. Like I have this big outdoor publication. So I've been working with them because they were based out of that town that I lived in, Wanaka. And so I realized, and during the time I'd had a blog and was kind of writing everything about my travel. My mom printed it out and it's like a binder, like 8 inches.
Yeah,
8
that's
inches
amazing.
thick.
She did that for you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mom.
Yeah, I know.
Always has our back. I love Mom.
She's like, you can publish this one day. Yeah. I'm doing you a solid.
I can publish it.
Yeah. Everyone, this was like right when like Eat, Pray, Love was coming out, and Cheryl Strand doing Wile. Like I think she was doing the Wild at the same time. She hadn't written it yet, and I was like, I could have been.
It's not too late.
Version.
Right?
It's your voice.
In a van.
Yeah.
Yeah. She dropped her whole life and moved to another country.
Like F all of this out.
Yeah. So I think through that, like, I was talking with somebody and they're like, you seem like you're kind of into like marketing and like telling a story and stuff like that. So I kind of started doing a little bit of that when I came back to the States and doing some social media and like freelance marketing stuff. Like through kayaking again, I kind of got connected to this woman who she had worked for a nonprofit that they worked with women in Afghanistan and doing rugs, like hand woven rugs, because it was one of the few opportunities for women in Afghanistan to earn income at the time because they could do it in their homes, especially in areas outside of, Kabul and more remote areas. And so I was doing some work with them. I kind of got tied into this outdoor festival in Asheville and, kind of took over their marketing and redid their website and worked with people on that. So I kind of fell into that kind of creative space. And then I realized very quickly, like, I don't care about digital marketing and like everything's about optimizing and SEO and all that crap that I couldn't care less about. It's just like not me. Cause for me, it's more about community and events and telling the stories and stuff. And that's what I had liked about marketing at the time. So that's kind of where I went next at that point. And then eventually I moved to DC from there and worked with a tech startup in the food space, doing some marketing with them. So that kind of brought me in. That's what I was like, oh, that'll get me back to quote the real world and a real job and, tech startup space and that kind of, that path, which then also took a hard left in the not so near future. So
yeah, like, what do you think about the real world these days?
Sorry, we have a foster dog, so you might hear her in the background. I think, quote, the real world is overhyped, in my opinion. I think it's something I've thought a lot about in the past few years, and especially in the past couple of years. So there'll be, I'm in a transition phase kind of again, and I think the real world is whatever you want it to be. Like if I wanted to pick up and move back to New Zealand, it'd be a little bit harder because I'm partnered now. But
he doesn't want to go with you.
He's in a very good. He loves his current role and what he's doing, and he's growing a ton. And I told him, I was like, in the next 5 years, I would love to live somewhere else. Again and whatnot. So that's kind of on our radar for the future. But
thank you so much for tuning in to part 1 of this conversation. We appreciate our listeners more than you could ever know. Stay tuned for part 2 coming soon. In the meantime, if you liked any part of what you heard, please, please, please do us a favor and follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're willing to go a step further, we would love for you to leave us a review and send this episode to a friend that you feel would be served by it in any way. We are so excited to finally share more about Catalyst, the community we are building in conjunction with this podcast. Our mission with Catalyst is to create an authentic, safe, and inclusive space for heart-centered, growth-minded, multi-passionate women to navigate their life's transitions, all by building meaningful relationships, learning from one another, and growing into the best version of themselves, and maybe even making the world a little bit better in the process. If you're interested in becoming a founding member of Catalyst, we would love to learn more about you and have you apply at wearecatalyst.social. Check it in the show notes. We only have a limited number of spots for this founding member round, so be sure to get your application in soon. Again, the website to apply is wearecatalyst.social. We look forward to the possibility of getting to know you on a deeper level and supporting you in navigating your life's transitions. We cannot wait to have you join us for the next episode. Until then, we encourage you to lean into your community and embrace the growth that inevitably happens when you're in transition. See you next week.